job and got such a great turnout, and it's a testament to all of your commitments to equality and inclusion for people with disabilities that so many have joined us today. How much of a difference can you make? How much of a difference can you make? It's so easy to feel powerless. You see a throne speech in this very building behind us, Queen's Park, just a couple of weeks ago that talked about building up Ontario for everybody. But everybody doesn't include people with disabilities. We weren't even mentioned. It's so easy to feel powerless. We hear political commitments about building more buildings in our colleges and universities and our school boards, but not a word about making sure that everybody, including people with disabilities, will be able to get in and independently get around them.
Shame.
It's so easy to feel powerless, but you can't feel powerless. It's people like you, it's you and people like you that have won so many battles over the years. 38 years ago or 36 years ago, when our Prime Minister, a guy named Trudeau, you've not heard the name before, proposed a Charter of Rights that included equality but didn't include people with disabilities. We fought back and we won an amendment to get that right included. It's the only right that was added to our Charter of Rights when the Charter was debated in Ottawa before Parliament. Equality for people with disabilities. It was in this very building behind us that 20 people just like you happened to end up in a committee room, frustrated and angry, in 1994, and who lit the flame that built the Cross Disability Coalition that won us the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And it's people like you who are uniting to try to get the government that works in the building behind us here to start taking that law more seriously. But let's just think back a year ago to the very march that we're on today, to the Disability Pride March here in Toronto. 1 year ago today, we did not have a government in power that was planning to develop a Canadians with Disabilities Act. A quarter of a century before, the United States passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, but for a quarter of a century, we federally had nothing like it to do the kind of things it needs to do. We had the Charter of Rights and the Human Rights Act, and they're helpful, but they aren't doing the job. Well, 1 year ago, when I spoke to you, we talked about the need to get this message out to candidates during the federal election last year. And we even had some federal candidates that took the day off the campaign trail to stand in unison with us. Where are we a year later? Well, it's thanks to people like you that we won a promise of a Canadians with Disabilities Act from 3 different political parties. First the Greens, then the New Democrats, and then the Liberals. You know what happened in the election. We now have our first ever national minister responsible for people with disabilities, herself a lawyer with vision loss with a human rights background, Carla Qualtrough. And we have a commitment for this legislation, and we have a national consultation underway now, funded by the federal government to the tune of $2 million. We've never had anything like this before. But we never can stop. And I want to take a few minutes with you to talk about what we need people like you, what we need you to do right now. Well, let's start with that federal act. The federal government is consulting on it. We need to bring forward a strong and unified message of what that law needs to include. Well, I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Accessibility for Ontario